All right, so we're going to get started now. So my name's Kanika. I am the president of the Data Science Club for the fall term. So I guess just a little introduction. I'm in my 3B of Math, Science, and Statistics, and I've been with the club for about 3 terms now. So this meeting is just going to go through a bit of what our plan is for events, so what kind of events we're going to have throughout the term. And then also the second part will be a little bit of an introduction to what data science is, especially for those of you that aren't too familiar with what it is. So I'm just going to share my screen. And then we can get started. All right, perfect. So as I said, welcome to the Fall 2020 Data Science Club. So we will be entirely remote this semester. So all of our events will be hosted via Zoom or through other events. So like we might have a Discord event for our socials. So it'll be primarily hosted on those 2 platforms. You will see all events on Facebook. So just a few housekeeping notes. If you haven't already, please make sure to mute yourself so that we don't have any interruptions. And if you haven't already registered as a member, make sure to do that after this session. This is to make sure that you are in our club, and we will be closing registration off soon. So please get that done soon after this event. I will also send out the link if anyone needs it session, but everything is on our link tree. So all important links will be there. Also, we understand that a lot of people will be coming from different time zones. So unfortunately, our events will be occurring likely in the evenings and Easter time. However, we are recording every single event. So all the workshops and reading groups will be recorded, with the exception of company events, in the case that companies aren't okay with us sharing that. But everything else will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you aren't able to make an event because of time zones or just the timing doesn't work out for you, you can check our YouTube channel and we will be sharing everything there. So this event will also be recorded and posted up on our Facebook page. So if you have any questions or you want to follow up with some of the information, it will be there available to you. So you might be wondering, what is Data Science Club and what exactly do we do? So we are a club focused on promoting data science, AI, and machine learning. So this is a great place to be if you are interested in this field or you're looking to find out what exactly is in this field. So if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them. You can message our Facebook group. You can also join our Discord channel and ask it, and one of our execs will likely respond in a timely manner, or someone else within the community will be able to answer your question. So that's a great place to get connected. Our Facebook group as well is really important. So we have both the Data Science Club page, and the Facebook group is a great place to go. People will post job opportunities. Sometimes there are resources. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to people there. So that's kind of how you can get involved with the club and with our community. We will be having a lot of events throughout the term. So I will get started on what our event plan is. So one of the primary events that we do host is weekly workshops. So this is a great opportunity if you're looking to learn some new skills, get some more familiarity with some of the tools that you need to have for data science. You can expand some of the data set work that we do and maybe build a side project with it. So take it a step further. I can also get you really familiar with working with large data sets. So that's especially important if you want to get into this field. For interviews, for your actual jobs, you need to get familiar with working with a lot of data. So some of the planned workshops that we have is Python for data science. So that will be a workshop next week. And this is extremely important if you want to get into the field, as getting familiar with working with Python is important. Python is the primary tool that most companies do use. So this will be an introduction into pandas, NumPy, how to do some data cleaning and some exploratory data analysis. So this is a really important workshop if you are interested. We will also have a computer vision workshop, ensemble learning, and many more throughout the term. So these will all be happening after reading week onwards. So these are some of the ideas that we have. Our workshops are hosted by our executive team. So they take the time out of their day to kind of build up like some slides, some code, and they walk you through the process. So it's a great way to ask someone who's familiar with the skill some questions if you have it, and build up your own skill set. Along with that, we do host reading groups. So reading groups are academia research focused. They are dedicated to reading maybe one paper or a couple papers, and then you come together and discuss what the content is and go through it together. So these are hosted by our executives. They will be like facilitating the conversation. It's a great way to actually get into the habit of following advancements in data science and getting comfortable with reading these research papers, especially if you're interested in following some of the latest discoveries within data science and ML. You need to often be reading papers, and this is really important for like future jobs as well. So it's a good habit to get into, and it's a great way to get comfortable with discussing your findings and asking questions about the paper. So we will have a reading group that will be going for around 6 weeks on reinforcement learning. And this will be starting on the week of October 18th. So right after reading week, we will begin. It will be, like I said, reinforcement learning hosted by one of our PhD executives. So this is a great opportunity to speak to someone who's actually in postgrad about papers and getting familiar with reading it. We will also have another tentative reading group in November. So if you are interested in the reading groups, make sure you stay tuned to our Facebook page and our Instagram pages as well. We will be posting all events there. So both reading groups and workshops, all events will show up on our Facebook, and the details will show up there as well. So like this event, all your Zoom links will also be posted on Facebook. And I will have a slide, in the next couple of slides, I will have a survey. So you can fill out what day works best for you for workshops and reading groups. So next week we have our workshop on Thursday, but for future workshops, we will be using this survey to kind of get an idea of what day works best for the majority of our members. And then we want to cater to that so that the majority of you can actually benefit from these workshops and reading groups. So really important that you fill this out if you want to actually participate in these events. So we will also have speaker events. So like in September where we had Hudson River Trading come in and speak about their internships. So we will have speakers coming in, either industries, professors, talking about what data science is like at their company, what type of research they're doing, the technology stack that they use. These are pretty useful if you want to understand how data science works in different companies and the applications into different fields. It's also a great way to network with representatives from the company, given that everything is going to be online for a while. So if you want to find out more about positions you're interested in, this is a great way to actually learn more about the company and ask the questions that you have. We will also be having a speaker event in November, which will be a lightning talk. So this will be with undergrad students and professors to speak about the research that they are doing. So if you are a student and you are currently in research and would like to speak at this event, please reach out to us on our Facebook page and we would love to set something up. So this is also a great way to find out what research is being done within our university and other ways that you can also get involved with research. So you can ask people how they got their undergrad research positions or ask professors if they are taking undergrads in. So it's a good way to get familiar with speaking to professors and other students as well. And lastly, in terms of educational events, we will also be having some co-op panel. So this will be later in the term, likely in November as well. So if you are a first year or someone looking to break into the field, this will be targeted towards you. It's a great way to learn about data science roles at various companies and asking students questions. So we will get students from different companies who have worked as a data scientist or within the field of ML and AI, so that you can ask them how they broke into the field, any tips for resume critiques, any tips for interviews, and any other questions about their internship experience. So this is a great way to network with other students, and you never know when you may build a connection that can get you a referral to one of the companies you're interested in. So definitely attend the co-op panel if you are looking to break into the field. This would be really useful. We're also trying out 2 different events this term. So we're going to be having office hours, which will be hosted on our Discord channel. So this will be hosted by our executive team. There will be a couple of slots throughout the week on days where there aren't events, and around a group of 2 to 3 executives will be there. So this is a great way to get to know someone from our team, build the community online. We want to have as many conversations on Discord as we can, especially because you aren't able to really drop into the data science office anymore. So this will kind of be your opportunity to talk to people, whether it's our executives or other people in the club. We want to have some open conversations about data science, how you get involved, anything really you want to talk about. Feel free to ask our executives questions about your resume, interviews, their experiences, and I guess how they also got involved in the club. So if you are interested in joining our club event in future terms, this is a great way to get involved. We definitely love having people who show their face a lot. So if you are participating in these conversations, this is a great way to get yourself noticed, especially for when you're applying as an exec for next term. We also would love to get to know our members. So if you do have some time and we are having an office hour, make sure you drop by. One other new event or series of events that we are trying out this term is going to be a guided project. So this will again start after reading week, and it will be a series of workshops and events catered to help get a data science side project started. So these can be how to get into exploratory data analysis, how to do data visualization, how to set up your GitHub. This will be a great way to actually get a side project started if you're not sure where to start, and we will be helping with finding data, etc. We will also be having a project showcase at the end of the term. So this is a great way to be judged and get prizes. So your project will be evaluated based on a number of criteria. We will release the criteria closer to the actual showcase date. And we are looking to have some industry professionals helping out as well. So this could be a great way to get your side project on your resume and also network with some companies and show it off to them. So if you are interested in doing a project and if you aren't really sure where to start or you'd like some guidance, definitely follow up with our Facebook page so that you can find out about the guided project and how that's going to work this term. And lastly, we're not an entirely serious club, so we do have some socials and some games nights. There is our very first social happening next Friday. So right before reading week, if you want to de-stress a bit and play a few games. So we have like Pictionary, poker, and more. There are also prizes available. So you have the opportunity to compete with other data science club members and win some gift cards. So if you are looking to make some friends, network with people, build a community online, especially for first years, since this is your first term online, this is a great way to get to know other people and also just have a nice break right before reading week begins. So a little bit of a de-stressor. Okay, so with all of this, you might be wondering, what is the best way for you to get involved? So first of all, like I mentioned, register as a member. The link will be on our link tree as well. All relevant Facebook groups and Instagram, Discord pages are all on our link tree as well. So that is a great resource if you are looking to get involved. You should come out to our weekly events. So whether this is a workshop you're interested in, if you'd like to participate in the reading group, you don't have to participate in every single reading group session. You can come to a few if that's what you're interested in, but come to the events that you're interested in and you would like to learn something new. Also come ready to learn and work on building up your skill set, since this will be catered towards helping you. At the reading groups, come ready to read papers, discuss them with your peers, and chat along with us on our online office hours. So these are all great ways to get involved online. We are trying to have as many opportunities as possible so that you can stay connected with the club and also be learning as much as you can outside of your classes. Also, we have an incentive this term with our events. So every non-social event that you attend, so this includes workshops, reading groups, panels, it will give you one ticket into a raffle at the end of the term, and we will be giving away some pretty big gift cards. So make sure you attend our end of term event as well if you are interested. We will be taking attendance during each of these events, so make sure you register as well like you did for this event. This raffle will begin after our first event, so starting with the workshop next week. So this is a great chance, another chance for you to win a prize and also get involved with the club. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to look at this link and fill this out. So this is the survey I was talking about before, just to get a little bit of an idea of what types of workshops you are most interested in, what days works for you for workshops, how much knowledge you have, what days work for you for reading weeks, and any other feedback you want to give to us. So another incentive with this workshop is we will be doing a raffle for everyone that does fill out this form, and there is a chance to win 2 $10 gift cards. So this is a great way if you want to get involved with the club. This way it guarantees that we will likely be doing an event on a day that works best for you. So I'm just going to give everyone till 6:20. So a little bit of a breather. Fill out the form now so that you don't forget later on. And then we will continue into the second half of this event. Okay, so hopefully everyone was able to fill out that form. I'm gonna give a few minutes. So does anyone have any questions? That's kind of how we're gonna be running the club. So the next section is an introduction to data science. So at this point, does anyone have any questions about the club, any of the events that we're hosting, or any logistical questions about how we're gonna be operating this fall term? So you can feel free to type any questions you have in the chat. Also throughout the event, if you have any questions, feel free to type it and I can answer them whenever I take any question breaks throughout the presentation. Yes, we are going to be recording our events. So workshops will be recorded, reading groups, depending on the host, will likely be recorded. And this will all go up on our YouTube channel. You can also see some of our previous term events have been recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel as well. So that way, if you miss anything or if you want to review some of the content from our workshop, it'll be there for you. My previous experience in data science. So I've done 2 internships in data science. My first one was with Goldspot Discoveries, so a startup in mining AI. And I did a bit of sentiment analysis for them. And then my last one for the summer was with Intact Data Lab. So I was working on the insurance side in their innovation lab. So your reading group meeting, so you will likely be reading one paper, sometimes it can be more than one paper, and then the host will cover some of the questions in it. They'll ask some questions to everyone else. So just try to have a discussion about it. Think of it kind of like a book club, but for research papers. So it kind of encourages you to read some of the research papers and then ask questions about any parts that you found interesting or that you weren't clear with, and hopefully someone else there was able to explain it, or you start a conversation going. So that's kind of what you do in the reading group. And yes, this club is a good way if you don't have any experience with data science, especially because we know that the majority of the members are first years. Some of these workshops will be for beginners, sorry. They will be for beginners. And our workshops will be very introductory so that you are able to work with the tools. There will be some that may be a little more difficult if you're not too familiar, but don't let that discourage you from attending the event. If you're interested in the topic, it's a great way to get started and you're able to learn something from it at least. And the guided project is also a great idea. If you don't have any experience in data science, it's a good way to get a project on. When I first started off, I didn't have any experience in data science, so I had to work with trying to build up a side project to showcase the skills that I needed to get the job. So this is a good way to get you into the field. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to start the second half of this workshop, which is an introduction to what data science is. So this will be a very beginner level introductory session, so it's not going to go too deep into some of the algorithms. That will be for our workshops. So now that we've gone through the plan, we're going to get started on why we need data science, some examples, a little bit on how data science kind of works, and then some of these skills, technologies, and techniques that you need to have for getting into the field or that you should look into understanding. So one of the biggest questions might be why we actually need data science for a company, or why there are a lot more data science positions happening more recently. So right now we live in a world where there is a lot of data, and you've probably heard of the term big data within a company. So there's a lot of possibilities of what we can do with this data. So especially because our decisions are becoming more automated. For example, for a company, if you're trying to recommend a product to a customer, you will look at the past history and the data of what types of products did they like before, what types of products did they not like, which ones did they purchase, and that would be used to quantitatively drive a decision to recommend a product to them. So we're using a lot of data sets and the data that we have at hand to drive our insights and improve business products, or to drive research in various fields. So data science roles are becoming more and more important as each company is building up a lot more data, and they want to figure out what they can do with this data to improve their company. There's also been a huge shift towards using statistics, machine learning, and helping innovations more recently. So you see a lot more companies in a variety of fields using data science. So for example, in the banking field, you have data scientists using their machine learning algorithms for fraud detection. In the healthcare field, you see them using it for classifying medical images. And for other businesses, it's used pretty often for product analytics as well. So these skills are extremely transferable between different fields. And I think one of the main things with going to different company events or going to panels is you get a feel for what type of field you want to use your data science skills in. So especially if you're in a co-op program or if you're looking for summer internships, try to explore around different data science fields and see which one you like best, and then you'll know where you want to be for a full-time career. So there's a lot of variety in where you can end up with data science. So you might be confused about what data science is actually used for. So I'll go through some very typical examples and examples that likely all of you have experienced to understand when it can be used. So the most common example that I'm sure almost everyone in this session has used is Netflix's recommendations. So this is incorporated into our everyday lives. Whenever you are watching a show and it tells you, because you watched these shows, here are a list of shows or movies that you should watch next. So Netflix uses a personalized recommender system, and they use your past data. So shows you've watched, whether you've rated the shows positively, rated them negatively, and also what shows you haven't watched in order to recommend new shows or movies for you. So this has been actually the source of 80% of their stream time. So it's extremely beneficial to Netflix, and it drives their business pretty well. It's also very beneficial to customers, as you no longer have to deal with the overwhelming amount of movies and TV shows that appear on Netflix. Usually it's really hard to make a decision about which one you actually want to watch. So these recommendations help a lot with trying to narrow down your decision. So their personalized recommender system works really well for them, and it has revolutionized the movie industry for them. So it is one of their key features and something that works really well. So that would be a recommender system being used in a Netflix, this company. Another one is a common example, fraud detection. So this is used especially in the banking industry. It can also be used in the insurance industry. So data science being used to find fraudulent activities. So this can involve fraudulent activities in credit card transactions, debit card transactions, or other transactions in general. So some ways that this can be detected is using algorithms to cluster and segment data based on different patterns that they try to find. They can also use some type of pattern recognition to find suspicious behavior. So if, like, let's say you're buying mainly food within your credit card bill, and then all of a sudden you make a very large clothing transaction in another country, that could be something that they pick up and they find that to be suspicious behavior because it doesn't follow the regular patterns that you have. So this is a very common example of data science being used in the banking field, and they use a lot of unsupervised learning for this. Okay, so now that I've gone through two examples, we'll go into what data science is and what types of skills are needed. So data science is used to dig deep into your data, and you're trying to find some insights or make decisions to help your business grow. So you kind of have some knowledge in mathematics, so statistics, and computer science as well. It's sometimes referred to as the blend of a statistician and a software engineer. So you are better at stats than a software engineer, but worse at computer science than a statistician. So you're a little bit of an in-between of both of those careers. So the process of data science, I've put it a little bit of a flow chart on the side. So you begin with trying to frame your problem and determining the scope. And this is really important so you don't start with a very vague problem and then you have no direction to go into. So it's nice to start with a problem and an idea of what you want to go into and the scope of the data that you will be using. Then once you know your scope, you go into collecting your data if it's not already readily available for you. So this can include web scraping sometimes or extracting external data sources from like an API. So those are some ways to collect your data. And then a large part of data science work is the actual cleaning and pre-processing of the data. So you spend the majority of your time trying to deal with outlier analysis, missing values, how to structure your data into the right form for your model. And then once you have done all of that, then you go into some exploratory data analysis. You look into familiarizing yourself with the data set that you're working with, see if you can get any initial insights from that, and then start your modeling. So with your model, you try to do some deeper analysis and understand what the results are, and then visualize the data. Visualizations are extremely important, especially if you were trying to show some business impact. For non-technical fields, visualizations help them understand what you were doing. And then your business skills are also required so that you can take the analysis that you have and then show the business value from it. So you need to make some conclusions from it, and then you also need to be able to present this to technical field if it's your team, and also non-technical audiences if you're trying to present it to like an executive team that isn't too familiar with the data science work. So that kind of brings me to the next slide, which shows that you need to have a combination of mathematics, computer science, and also domain expertise. So it relies on the balance of these three sections. You need to have mathematics for statistical research and machine learning so that you can understand what you are applying and the mathematics behind it. That's especially important in order to optimize your functions and be able to comprehend your results. You also need computer science skills to do the data processing and also to be able to use the machine learning. So in order to apply the ML algorithms, optimize them, and also with your data flow pipeline. Computer science is also extremely important because you need to understand data structures, which is obviously very important in data science. And lastly, you need domain expertise so that you're able to interpret your results to make conclusions. So you may look at a number and not have, if you don't have any domain expertise, you won't know how this applies to your business problem. And you need to be able to do that in order to make a valid conclusion. Otherwise, you've done modeling project, but you have no idea what the interpretation is. So to show some business value and why you should have actually used data science and ML for the company's work, it's important to be able to do the business value part of it, and domain expertise helps with that. So one example, I guess, where domain expertise would be extremely important is if you do image classification on a bunch of medical images. If you're not familiar with being able to, let's say, detect cancer from a scan, and if you don't know how to interpret that, doing this classification project would be useful, but you wouldn't be able to extract the information from that and make some conclusions. So that's an example where domain expertise would be extremely important. Okay, so I'm going to go over some relevant skills and some technologies that are useful. So to get into the field, there are some relevant, I guess, theorems or classes that are useful to consider the content from. And this can be applied across all the fields. So firstly, linear algebra and basic calculus, especially multivariate calculus, is important. Data points that you use are usually looked at as multi-dimensional vectors. So a collection of data points becomes a matrix. So this is, for example, when you're looking at a data frame and you have multiple columns and multiple rows, think of that as a matrix. So then a lot of statistical algorithms use the matrix and vector transformations and techniques. And some of these like different theories that you learn through linear algebra can be used to optimize your function or to do different transformations on the data. So that's really important to learn, especially when you're doing things with Python, NumPy. A lot of this is vector and matrix transformations and different techniques with that. An example of multivariate calculus being used is you need to be able to take partial derivatives to properly understand the gradient descent algorithm, which is being used to optimize your learning functions. So that's like some examples where linear algebra and calculus become useful for data science. Probability and statistics. So that's more of a given. You use probability in trying to figure out maximum likelihood for parameters and estimating. You also use probability with predictions, and a lot of other algorithms depend heavily on this probability and statistical theory. So doing an introductory probability and stats class is really useful. If you're a first year and you are in the math faculty, for example, you don't do your stat 230 until at the earliest 1B and then second year. So it might be a good idea to read up on some of this, learn some of the basic concepts if you want to start applying for data science roles ahead of time, just to get an idea, because probability and stats questions can be asked during an interview. So just get some familiarity with it. Lastly, software engineering is also important. So you need to be able to implement machine learning algorithms, automate the implementation of these statistical methods. So software engineering comes in handy with this. Also with the data flow pipeline and setting up your algorithms. And like I said earlier, understanding data structures is also really important. So in this case, software engineering is very useful for data science, as you are trying to make sure that you are computationally handling all these problems rather than trying to compute it by hand. So these three are some important skills that a data scientist needs in order to be able to work efficiently with the data that you have. Okay, so I'm going to take a 2-minute break. And if anyone has any questions about the content that I've covered so far, now's the time I can answer some questions. Otherwise, we will move forward into some of the technologies that are useful to know. From my experience, exploratory data analysis and the cleaning and preprocessing takes the longest. So depending on how clean your data is, sometimes you can get it in a very structured form. And let's say like on a Kaggle data set, sometimes it's very structured and you don't have to do any preprocessing for it. But then there are other cases where there are a lot of outliers or you're missing a lot of values, and then you need to take the time to figure out whether you're going to remove these values. So if it's a very small set of missing values, maybe you can remove it entirely. Or if you want to use interpolation or extrapolation to actually fill in these values. So I think that cleaning and processing takes up, I think some people have said like 80% of your time. And then once you're actually done that, the modeling part becomes much more easy. So it's easier to do that part. That's usually the longest part. And yes, I will be posting the recording for this page. So given that everything went correctly with our Zoom recording, I will post it. Any other questions? So when you're actually using your algorithms, especially on a co-op as well, it's very unlikely that they will ask you to make the algorithm from scratch. I would say the advanced calculus and math is helpful when you are trying to understand the algorithm you're using. So if you have a result that you're not sure like why it's working out, it's good to understand the background of it and see how you could improve it, especially when you're tweaking up the algorithm, or if you want to make some changes to it. It's extremely useful to understand the math behind it. Another reason I would say you should understand the math behind some of these methods is during an interview, they can ask you questions. It's fair game. They do expect you to understand the math part of it, as data science is a very math heavy role. So I would say it does come in handy. When you're actually doing the role, it depends on what kind of work you're doing. So if you go for a research role, you'll definitely need to understand it more thoroughly than if you went for just an application role. But overall, I do think it comes in handy and it is helpful to understand. Okay, so I'm going to continue. And if you have any questions, you can continue to ask them and I will answer the rest of them at the end of the session. So you might be wondering now what types of technologies you should get familiar with, especially if you were starting out in the field. Where did you kind of start? So one of the main tools that you will be using is SQL. So you need to have some familiarity with databases. Relational databases are often queried with SQL. This is usually one of the tools that's listed in almost every job posting for data science. So it's really common and there are a lot of resources to learn and test your skills. For example, SQLZoo.net is really good for helping you get familiar with it and also practicing for interviews. So that's one of the tools that I use. There's a lot on SQL, so that is one of the tools I would definitely start with. Get familiar with handling data and working with databases. Along with that, distributed frameworks. So Hadoop, a lot of companies use this to store and handle their data. So Hadoop is used for different transformations with your data. I'm not too familiar with it myself. So if you'd like to learn more about it, you can Google it or also message our Facebook chat, our group on Facebook, on the Data Science Club, and I can see if one of the other execs who has more experience with it can answer that question. So I haven't had any co-ops who have actually had to use it yet, but I have seen some of the more ML heavy ones are useful for it. I think in CS 234, I might be getting that wrong. I think your data structures one, you do use SQL sometimes. I'm not sure how much you actually use it and how much of it is more theoretical. So I would say it's a good idea to get started on learning SQL yourself and getting familiar with it. It's not too difficult to learn. I would say it's easier and the syntax is not as difficult as other programming languages. So if you want to learn one of the tools in your first year of SQL, is something you can pick up in a couple of weeks. Along with that, data preprocessing and cleaning, like I mentioned, is an important part of the job. So the most common languages used are Python, R, and MATLAB. MATLAB is less common, but it can be useful to know. Python is usually the one that most companies use. So over the years, people have shifted from using R to Python, and there are a lot more libraries in it as well that are used for data science and machine learning. So if you wanted to start with one of these languages, I highly recommend you start with getting familiar with Python and specifically with pandas, NumPy, scikit-learn, just so you can get familiar with using Python to handle data rather than making functions. Lastly, to implement your machine learning frameworks, it's important to, again, be familiar with Python and R libraries. For Python, as I mentioned, NumPy is important, scikit-learn, and matplotlib is really good for visualizing, and TensorFlow as well. So these are some frameworks that are used, and they show up pretty often in job descriptions as well. So you need to be familiar with this if you're going to put Python for data science like on your resume. Yes, PyTorch is also very useful. Non-relational databases. I have seen a few postings where they do ask for MongoDB. From what I've seen, most of the time it's SQL databases, but sometimes they do ask for MongoDB. So that can be useful for data analysis. It really depends on the company and how they're structuring it. I would say that is useful though. But like maybe like start off with SQL and then work your way towards like understanding how to query in that. Okay, So I'll answer the rest of the questions at the end of the session. I'm just going to try to get through. We only have a few more slides going anyway. So lastly, now that we've gone through some skills and technologies, we're going to go over some of the techniques that you use. So this has become a lot more easily implemented through libraries created for Python. So some of these ML techniques can be separated into supervised or unsupervised learning. So with supervised learning, you are actually feeding your algorithm on a labeled data set. So think of it as a data set where you already know the answer key, and then you're training your model based on this to evaluate the accuracy. So some examples are classification and regression techniques, so linear and logistic. One example can be where you're actually, like, let's say you have a housing data set and you have all these variables and then you have the price at the end. So that would be a case where you could fit a linear model based on all these variables to predict the housing prices. On the other hand, unsupervised learning provides unlabeled data to the algorithm. So your algorithm tries to make some sense of the patterns and trends that it finds, and it tries to focus on the features that it thinks are important. Some examples of this involve dimensionality reduction methods, such as principal component analysis, so that's PCA, and also clustering algorithms. So in a clustering algorithm, it tries to find some patterns within the data points and then cluster them into different groups. An example of when you would use dimensionality reduction techniques is, so for the same example with the housing price, let's say that one of my variables is the area in feet and one of them is the area in meters. These are basically feeding the model the exact same data, so they'd be highly correlated. So dimensionality reduction is used to remove one of these variables so that you only have very uncorrelated variables, and then you try to get rid of the ones that are highly correlated. So it simplifies your model a bit. And so this kind of visualization is a bunch of different clustering algorithms on scikit-learn. And you can kind of see how it notices some trends in the pattern, some trends and patterns in the data, and then tries to separate them into different groups. So if you look at the bottom row, you can see that in the first one, it notices 3 different groups. In the second one, it notices 4. So depending on the different algorithm, it will look for different patterns and then try to separate them into different groups. And this is really useful if you actually don't know what to predict or you don't know what kind of patterns you're looking for. This can be a great starting point. And okay, so last slide, how you can get started with data science. So this might be an overwhelming amount of information. I know when I started off in data science, I had no idea where to start, and it seemed very difficult to get into the field. But don't worry, there's a lot of resources available to get involved and to learn the skills. So the earlier you start, the better. So I would say, firstly, attend our data science in Python workshop. This is a great way to build up your skill set and get familiar with some of the data. And this will be next week as well. You can also see on our YouTube channel, as I mentioned, some previous workshops. So we do have a couple of our workshops recorded and they have been uploaded as well. So you can learn, follow along with the content and try to understand some of the different lessons from there. And besides our workshops, there are also online courses. So Coursera has some pretty good machine learning courses if you want to get involved. DataCamp, I believe with your Waterloo email, you can actually get a 2-month trial free for DataCamp. And they do have some Python for data science, Python for data engineering, R for data science, etc. Courses, so you can work through it. The one in the chat, that machine learning course by Coursera is actually really useful. That's the one that I did. And it's a good way to get a little bit of an idea on the different algorithms that can be used. Along with that, get involved with Kaggle competitions. So if you want to test out your skills, a great way is actually getting your hands dirty with a data set. So learn how to clean it, learn how to model it, learn how to visualize it. And this can also be a nice way to put a project onto your GitHub page and then show your skills off in a resume. So Kaggle competitions are really good ways to get started. And another way is learning hands-on by walking through a tutorial. So Towards Data Science and Medium have some resources on different tutorials people have done. Once you get more familiar and you do some of your own work on a different data set, maybe write a tutorial yourself. It's a great way to showcase your work for interviews, and also it's a good way to get comfortable with being able to communicate how you work, the process, and the results. So the better you get with communicating your results, the better you will be with your interviews so that you can explain the projects you actually did. Also, whenever you do any data science work, your oral communication and written communication skills need to be really strong. You are constantly communicating your results to your team and to other people, so executives or at conferences. So getting started with actually getting comfortable speaking about it and writing about it is really important. So this will be posted, and I can also send the link for the slides if anyone wants to look at any of these resources and try to get started themselves. So thank you to everyone for attending today's presentation. To summarize some takeaways for the club. So register as a member if you haven't already. Someone asked in the chat if they should use their Waterloo email. Please use your Waterloo email so that we know you're an actual student with our university. Fill out the availability form if you haven't already. I can also post that. I believe someone has posted that in the chat. So save that link and you will enter in the raffle for the gift cards. And follow our Facebook page, Instagram page, and stay updated on our events. So we will be posting every event at least a week in advance. So you'll be able to see the upcoming events. Right now it is Python for data analysis next Thursday and our social next Friday. And okay, so if you have any questions, you can ask it in the chat. I'll start answering some of the ones that I haven't yet. Okay, so if you registered with your normal email, it shouldn't be a problem if your student number has been included. If you would like to change it, you're always free to message us, but I don't think it'll be much of an issue. It's just for anyone signing up from now on, it'd be useful to use your Waterloo email. Fast AI is a great course as well, yeah. So I did Fast AI for my data science internship with the startup. They use Fast AI for the sentiment analysis. And they kind of walk you through different examples that you, and like applications where you actually use their tools. So that's a great way to get started as well. If you're new to ML techniques, I would say get started with linear logistic regression. Those are very simple ones, and they will rely on like some lower level of statistical understanding. So that's a great way to get involved. For non-relational databases versus relational, I'm not too familiar with the pros and cons of this, so sorry about that. But again, you can message our Facebook chat and we can help you out with that. Or you can also message our Discord channel and maybe someone else there can help you out with that. The link to our YouTube channel is on our link tree. So if you go there, you'll be able to get access to our YouTube channel where all the videos are going to be uploaded. I will look into why the Facebook group link in the link tree is not working. So I'll double check that and maybe I need to update the link. And for registration, so for this one, you don't get entered into the raffle, so it doesn't entirely remember. It doesn't really matter whether you used your Waterloo or your personal email. For all future events, use your Waterloo email because we're not asking for your student ID. So that will be our way of verifying if you are a Waterloo student, especially because we've had high school students express their interest in this, but the funds are only going to be used on Waterloo students. You can watch some introductory statistics videos. Coursera goes through some of the math. It skips out on some steps that might be a little more difficult. For example, it doesn't really focus too much on like how to do partial derivatives. If you wanted to get started on the math, I would say get started with understanding how probability works. Naive Bayes is really useful. You can honestly use the Stat 230, 231 course notes. They're not too heavy on some of the theory, but they are a good way to get started with understanding some of the like summary information you need when you're doing basic statistics. And like, for example, like when to use the mean, median, mode. That can be useful when you're replacing missing values. So maybe get started with some of the introductory courses. You can also look up probability or statistics for data science on YouTube, and there should be some videos on that. I think, so I've actually heard of people get data science internships for their first one. I personally didn't go for a data science internship because I had no idea I wanted to do this for my first one. But if you do have experience with some project, you showcase that you are familiar with Python and some of the other skills, a lot of companies do look for eager students. So even if you aren't the most knowledgeable about probability stats, some of the computer science stuff, if you are very eager and you did your own project and you show them that you are willing to learn on the job, they will take a chance on you. So one of our previous presidents on her first internship got a data science position with Capital One. So there are examples where people do get it for their first one. Usually not too much experience. They kind of understand that you are a first year. So the question was, for your first co-op, how much experience do they expect? They understand you are going for your first internship. A project is useful to have. It's also useful to maybe list some of the relevant courses you're taking. So some of the CS courses you're taking, or maybe some of the stats ones if you started to do probability ahead of time. Don't stress too much about needing a job experience before. I didn't have a job experience before I went into my first co-op, and it worked out fine. A lot of my friends also didn't have too much experience or any experience at all. If you have some experiences where you've been a part of a club in your high school, that can be useful just to show that you have leadership skills, you can work on a team. And in terms of your technical skills, a project is always useful. So if you do have free time, maybe during your winter break before people start applying to your first co-op, try to get a project done, or try to do a certification class or finish a Coursera course. So something like that could be useful. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, just out of curiosity, how many of you, I guess you can just like put a thumbs up in the chat or say yes, but like how many of you would find it useful to be given a list of resources from our exec of like ways you can get involved in data science first? So like some of the tools you can use for like SQL or Python, maybe some recommended videos that we have. Okay, so I will definitely speak to them and we'll put something together, and we can share that later on in the chat. So I can share that on our Facebook page and in our Discord channel as well. One last thing, if no one has any questions, office hours will be posted right after this event on our Facebook page. So if you have any questions, they will be starting next week. You can ask some of our executives those questions as well. Some of them have been in the field. Some of them are just passionate about it. So feel free to ask them any questions. You can get a Stat 230 course notes. Yes, if you Google that, I'm pretty sure the PDF is there. Otherwise, you can also buy it from the bookstore, but I'm pretty sure they give it free. So someone should have uploaded some PDF somewhere on the internet. Yeah, so there is a way you can get 2 months free with Data Camp. I can look into that. And then if you message our Facebook chat, if you are interested in trying to get that, I'll look into it and then I can share the information there with you on how to actually did it earlier, but I don't remember the exact process. So I'll double check about that. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? All right, so thank you everyone for attending. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to our Facebook page or our Discord channel. All right, have a good night, everyone.